Hey, it's Chris here. We are midway through August, which sounds crazy to say. We've had a bunch of rain this week and temperatures have come down a fair bit, which means we are thinking salmon. We've already seen some come into a few rivers over the last couple of weeks, and we are expecting a lot more to show up in the near future. If you want to get into one of the biggest fish of your life in around the GTA, you don't have to go far from home, this is the time of year to do it. Salmon fishing can be fantastic, but it is very timing dependent, and that's why today we are going to go through how to find salmon, how to time them, and how to fish for them. Salmon are driven by a few things. One of the biggest ones, especially early in the season, is rainfall. Rain has a few effects on salmon fishing. The first one is it raises the water level of rivers. Salmon are huge fish and they need a certain depth of water to be able to swim through the rivers, and so a rising river will help them navigate it. The other thing that rising water levels does is that the water that's flowing out of the rivers into the Great Lakes goes out further into the Great Lakes, and salmon can actually pick up the smell of those rivers more easily, and then that becomes a cue for them to start running them. The second factor that those fish are going to look at, pretty well as important as water level, is water temperature. And so cooler nights are a huge factor for these fish as well, which we have seen in the last week. We've gone from overnights over 20 degrees to now overnights in the mid-teens with even cooler temps on the horizon in some places. That is a huge go flag for those fish that will get them moving. Depending on the river, some rivers which are typically quite shallow, rain is more important, and some rivers which have adequate depth, temperature is more important. Typically, your earliest running rivers are going to be the ones that have enough depth to them that the fish can navigate without them coming up too high, and the ones which are already relatively cool. So if you think of the rivers which are generally very good trout fisheries, those ones also tend to get earlier runs of fish. Rivers like, say, the Humber and the Don River, which flow right through Toronto, those rivers tend to stay warmer longer because of the amount of runoff water flowing into them off the hot streets, and so they tend to get later runs of fish. So that's an easy way to sort of think about which rivers are going to be a little bit earlier, which ones are a little later. Generally, trying to find these fish, you want to be fishing just after we've had some rain and as the rivers are dropping and clearing. That means that for a small river, you might be going day after to 2 days after a decent rain. And for a bigger river that has a lot more water to clear out, you might be going 3, 4, or even 5 days after a rain. So keep an eye on the weather forecast and check your river flows. That'll give you a great insight into what rivers you may want to check out. Fish can be a little sporadic this time of year, but the great thing about fishing salmon early on in the season is that those fish will be fresh out of the lakes, which means that they can be at their most aggressive and their hardest fighting. You also don't have some of the crowds that you'll see later into the season when there are more fish around, so more space for yourself as well. Salmon are cold water fish, which means that they thrive in cold water, and like trout, we would generally recommend that you avoid targeting salmon if the water temperatures are over 20 degrees, especially if you intend on releasing those fish. So with that said, there are still some rivers out there that may have fish that are a little warm, but within the next week or two, we're going to get well into acceptable ranges for fish, and we're going to see more and more fish around. So keep your eyes peeled, tie your flies, get ready. We're going to have more insights on how to fish for these fish, flies to fish, and all that good stuff in the coming weeks. And as always, if you need help figuring out where to go or what to fish with, come down, chat with us. We'll be happy to help you out.